Welcome to Customer Service Academy Radio with author and customer experience expert Tony Johnson. Tony will share his vision for successful customer service, leadership, and business excellence, and speak to some of the most impactful leaders in business today. And now, here's Tony Johnson.
Hello, everybody. Customer Service Academy is on the air. I'm Tony Johnson, your customer experience speaker, consultant, and trainer. Today's episode coming to you courtesy of Ignite Your Service Training and Consulting and 4XI Global Consulting and Solutions. Truly better together. Folks, head on over to my website. Check it out. We are going to be doing some amazing summits into the winter, spring, and fall of next year. Make sure that you head on over to igniteyourservice.com/summits and check those out because, again, we will be doing some fantastic summits, again, into the summer, into the fall, into the winter, in some great locations. So head on over and check it out today. That said, we are welcoming Geoffrey Reid onto the show today. Geoffrey transitioned from public policy analyst to globally recognized sales leader. His academic foundation, built at Bishop's University, was enriched by a master's degree in doctoral studies. He's got a diverse batch of experiences, including roles as a mediator, a consultant, and adjunct professor, where he's taught negotiations and conflict resolution. He's now focused on sharing his extensive sales knowledge through his book, The Revenue Catalyst, Mastering the Art of Sales. This will fill an educational gap in business schools and beyond for sure. Geoffrey, great to have you here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, hey, we always start off with the same question. I think it's so cool because everybody has a different slant on the same question, and it's always so much fun. Our audience, which has a lot of sales professionals, folks in hospitality, love to hear about this stuff. But what does a great customer experience mean to you, either in your work, or, what you provide to folks, or personally? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, fantastic question. Look, I think that I often reflect back at when I was a child and I used to hear these mottos by retailers saying the customer is always right, and where that comes in with sales. And I used to tell my salespeople oftentimes the customer isn't always right, and we need to have a broader mind about what that actually represents. Look, I guess in my experience in sales, and I write about this in the book where I give a spectrum of sales from 1 to 10, where 1 is the customer's always right, and 10 is why should we accept you into our club, and everything in between, really the variation between what I would call persuasive sales and resistant sales. Look, customers don't like to be sold, but they love to buy. And I would say the way that any organization or individual chooses to position their product and their sales process can really be placed within this spectrum of giving customers an opportunity to feel fulfilled by the buying experience. Oftentimes, people feel satisfied by buying something that's hard to get. People want things that they can't have. So often, the customer experience is a better one if someone feels that they're getting something that's valuable, scarce, and precious. So that's a broad way of how I would answer that question, because it does vary, but it is a very powerful experience to leave the customer with, knowing that they got something that other people couldn't.
For sure. Scarcity is a thing for sure. You talk about the fifth dimension in your business book, The Revenue Catalyst. Can you quickly tell us what the first 4 are and what the fifth is and why it matters for our audience?
Yeah, so look, the book was inspired by a visit that I had from the president of Concordia University when I was a CEO in London. It was his farewell tour, Alan Shepard, who's now the head of Western Ontario University, and it gave me an opportunity to ask about the structure of business schools, because I was always perplexed. Why are business schools structured the way they are? In business school, the 4 dimensions that are taught, referring to your question, are finance, accounting, human resources, and marketing. And even though there's a sales element to marketing, most CEOs that I know are responsible for the revenue side. Sales seems to be that bastion of business that isn't taught academically at school. People learn how to sell either on the job or through other means, a lot of program selling sales. So the whole way my book was structured was really to fill that void I prepared this as if I were a professor and had the opportunity to redo a business school and create that fifth element of business school, which is teaching sales from the perspective of an all fronts approach.
Do you think that universities and colleges and schools in general, do you think that they're going to adopt doing more of that sales kind of training, or is it always going to live outside of the boundaries of those kind of educational pieces, do you think?
Yeah, that's spot on. When I had a chance to sit in front of Alan Shepard, who's, and ask him, he was asking me the question, how are we doing preparing our students to work for you? And how are they when they enter the door? And I said, quite well, because a lot of people from that university, Concordia, where I used to teach, and he was running, were very good. But I asked him, why is there no sales education at Concordia? And his response, he laughed, and his response was, professors often don't feel comfortable teaching things they don't know enough about. So there is this void that exists in the current structures of how professors will seek a academic career and tenure, rising from assistant professor to full professor, that often shields them from the ability to pick up the experience that they would need to be able to teach sales properly. On the flip side, there's no shortage of ways for universities to capitalize on this void and to create a difference between them and other schools by creating sales programs that are going to make a more complete educational platform and attract more students and generate more revenue through tuition. So I think that there are some structural barriers, but I think it's a missed opportunity that if universities don't start creating programs that teach sales or even groom people to become a CEO in a company, because that's another piece that is missing in conjunction with a lack of sales.
And it is interesting because I've found I live in Florida, and I've found that some of the universities here, although they may not have the expertise, some of the professors are getting more and more apt to call in, a phone a friend, an expert to come in, if you will,
Mm,
to do some sessions. I recently got called down to Florida International University. They do have a big hospitality program down there, but they don't teach traditional CX. So I came
mm,
down and did a night school session for their professors in that department on the science of customer experience and how it ladders
nice.
into hospitality. And I thought that was a really interesting way for them to handle it, because they're not looking to set up an entire CX curriculum, but they wanted
Mm.
to give them some flavor. And I think, to your point, it sounds like there's opportunities for phone a friends and guest speakers and folks that maybe have that experience to come in and supplement the great work professors are doing.
Indeed, and there's a whole bunch of resources. It really depends on the open-mindedness. I was invited in to do the same thing after talking to Alan Shepard, and I was invited in to meet the advancement team, which does fundraising, to really give aspects of what they might have been missing in terms of their preparation. So I think there are interim opportunities, but I think there's a massive opportunity to really redo sales education. At any given point in the United States, there are 4 million students in business school spending a lot of money not learning sales. And in the meantime, what's more important to any business than revenue?
Fair enough. So when you think about it, those sales are going to be really, done by the sales team, if you will. So could
Mm.
you share some tips? Because organizations, and I work with a lot of them, they are always working to build that world-class sales team. So if you were given tips to folks listening, how do they build and nurture top sales talent in their organizations? What couple of tips might you give them?
Yeah, look, the value of my tips, I think, really comes from many years of experience and a lot of trial and error. But when I figured out the formula that I am a proponent of, things started to work. So, look, there are a lot of misconceptions in sales. What characteristics are you looking for? Are you looking for intelligence? Are you looking for slick talkers, fast talkers, people that communicate well, people that are just naturally persuasive? And these are all questions that I didn't have the answer to when I was first asked to build sales teams. And done wrong, there can be a lot of turnover if you're bringing in the wrong types of people, and there can be a lot of mistakes made. And look, I'll tell you that at one point, Tony, I just realized that I can teach everything to anyone wanting to know about sales process wise. But the one thing I can't teach is attitude. And once I isolated attitude as being that characteristic that I cherish the very most with every single person that I interviewed, and would ask them psychological interviews to understand their attitude and what they would do under challenging circumstances. I really I was able to identify the people that would stick with it and would grow, and I was able to identify people that might become vindictive or have other qualities that weren't helpful. And so by making that the starting point, it opened up a lot of opportunities. And then from there, a strong development plan with different forms of training, whether it be inaugural training, tape process training, motivational. There are many different types of training, a learning management system to really give people a program of where they need to be on a current date. The right number of reviews, the right number of coaching in different forms, the use of KPIs, etc. All of that built into a development plan. We can push the ball upfield in a predictable way with the right types of people if we isolate that initial variable of attitude is what I found is the most important in sales. If I can put that in place, all the other interventions that I would introduce later will take root and will be that much more effective.
Nice. So you talked about KPIs there and some things. How do KPIs enhance predictability and efficiency as a part of all of this? Because measurement and ROI and KPIs are so important to organizations these days. In fact, I spend most of my life defending CX through KPIs and ROI myself. So
Yeah.
what would you tell us about that and how they can enhance those things?
Yeah, look, KPIs see things that we don't see with the naked eye. And I've really come full circle in learning sales where I could say at the very beginning, the only two KPIs that really measured were number of calls and talk time on the phone for people doing telesales. And that only tells you so much. I don't want someone, making 200 dials a day if they can't keep someone on the phone. It doesn't really tell us enough. So by really getting into the granularity of what the entire sale process is and breaking it down into a series of steps that can be measured, and then finding gold standards for each of those measurements in terms of what's proven to be possible by top performers, and using that to really challenge reps to identify their weaknesses and turn those weaknesses into strengths in an ongoing way. It's perfectly accessible to all of us to be able to shape sales performance and to make it highly predictable once we have built that type of system. And then it really becomes a tremendous tool for motivation, because when people are goal setting or saying what they want to make, assuming that a sales job is base and commission, there are ways of reverse engineering. If someone tells me that they have a specific goal, I can look at their KPIs and I can reverse engineer that income and tell them that this is what they would need to do at every step of the process to be able to be in the vicinity, given their particular closing percentages and everything that comes prior to that. So I think it's a dereliction of responsibility not to be using these tools, because there's money being left on the table. Might as well burn money in your fireplace if you're not digging deep and really trying to identify all of those factors and variables and trying to make them as strong as they possibly can be.
When you think about those KPIs that you're talking through there, are there any in particular? Do you have any pet KPIs, any that you think are tremendous indicators of success, either leading or lagging or measurement? What are some of your favorites that you talk to organizations about?
Yeah, well, look, I would say that when it comes down to it really depends on whether a pitch is a cold pitch, or a warm pitch. If it's scheduled, is it face to face? Is it on the phone? Is it an interrupting type sale? I would say in a sale, that's interrupting, one's ability to, sales pitch, sales reps being able to build the value that they need to do through a process of impact statement, value proposition, qualifying, FABs, trial close questions, and then price. If someone can warp speed through that particular process just because they're very good at managing the ebbs and flows of a conversation, that to me would be a predictability of someone who could really be nurtured. But that's the case in an advanced situation. If I were to compare that to, for example, some of the things that I was measuring during the pandemic, shifts of prospecting, where how many calls would it take for a rep to get a prospect on the phone, or how many emails would it take, or LinkedIn outreaches would it take for someone to get a pitch opportunity? I was amazed by how broad the performance could be, whereas I would have people sometimes sending out having to send out 30 100 emails or 200 emails just to get even a bite, where I had one rep at a particular office who was just very good at research and finding nuggets, and it almost felt like every 20 emails she would get a pitch opportunity. And so by really looking at the and how that shifts over time. So I would say that now that has shifted quite a bit, where it's a little bit harder to use those prospecting methods, and all that really does is it's insanity to keep doing things that that aren't working. So that gives us an opportunity then to be able to create a parallel process to work. So look, I guess I'm trying to give two extreme examples, but all are important in making the adjustments that are necessary, because sales, as you know, Tony, evolves rapidly, and the things that were working in 1980 or the year 2000 or 2020 are not exactly the same, and they need to be adapted. And KPIs really give us the opportunity to make those isolated, nimble adjustments that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. It would just be guesswork.
Now, you said something interesting in there when you were talking about the example of the sales leader that was good. When you think about the, call them behaviors, call them skills, the attributes, if you will, is that one of the attributes of a good sales leader, as they do the research, or is it about storytelling, or is it being good at guiding a conversation? As you look at your history of working with folks, what have you seen in folks where you're like, yeah, that's going to be a good sales leader because you see some of these behaviors in them?
Yeah, no, spot on. I would say that all of these are winning attributes, and they're just as important. If this were baseball, you need to be able to run, hit, catch, and throw. That for the coach to put you on the field. So being able to see potential in one of those areas, and then be able to trust that the other areas can be developed, is a good attitude. And I often, all I really often want is one or two of them to be strong at first, and then we can work on it. And sometimes it's just a matter of attitude. I use research. I compare that one person that I referenced, who was very good at research and just finding that angle or that piece that would cause someone to engage. She worked with someone who was kind of like turning around a big ship. It would take him months to make the adjustments to that he would need to, from a research perspective, to seize the opportunities that were there. And that is an attitudinal thing as well. People are creatures of habit, and I'm sure this person might have had the potential to be as good a researcher as the first woman, but there were some blocks in habit and attitude that caused him to not capitalize on it. So yeah, I would say all of the above are definitely valuable, and all and once you identify what are those skill sets, everyone should be pushing to be 9 out of 10 on those, because this is people's livelihood. What would people do in another profession to be able to have a higher performance, to make more money, to extract higher income? That's the commitment that I'm looking for. I want people to be reading books and updating their repertoire, and constantly on a goal of self-improvement, because it is their profession, and all of those pieces need to be perfected over time and renewed.
So, what are some practical insights you can share with our audience when we think about, B2B, business to business, or B2C, business to customer, consumer sales? What practical insights? Because the reason I ask this question is our audience loves to know where to start. So, for those folks that are looking to get started, that want to be a little bit better and a little bit more intentional in this process, what would you tell them? Where is square one? Where do folks start if they want to start this journey?
Well, look, chapter one of my book is really what I think is the starting point for any sales process, which is product positioning. And you mentioned storytelling before. There are stories that really will place a product within a certain frame, and is that a frame that is rare and valuable, or is that a frame that's plentiful and fast moving? Choosing the right positioning is key. And then being able to, once someone has positioned the product correctly, be able to choose a sales strategy that corresponds to that positioning. A rare, if one is the only game in town, there's a resistance model of, I only have so much to go around. Why should I sell it to you? Could be a very powerful frame under those conditions. Whereas, if there's tons of competition and plentiful product, it might be a more value-based, and FAB-based features type sale. So if those two pieces aren't in place solidly and aren't working harmoniously, the things that come later often are out of place, and one has to be congruent, with that the whole way through the sales process. So there are other examples that I could give of practical things that would relate to that, but I would say that unequivocally that would be the starting point.
And that does make sense. That idea of articulation and understanding and those kinds of things, really do uh, seem like a great place to start. Because so often, if you don't have that foundation, you don't have much to build on. So I think that makes a
Mm.
lot of sense. Well, Geoffrey, this has been fantastic so far. And folks, if you're enjoying this conversation, and I know that you are, please leave us 5 stars, say something nice, share it, make sure that you leave a comment. Really help keep Customer Service Academy one of the top customer service podcasts in the world. And thank you so much for FeedSpot for including us on your list of CX and customer service podcasts this year. We really appreciate being in the top 10 there. And again, Geoffrey, this has been great so far. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I think so, Tony. Let's do it.
Okay. I love a little bit of hesitancy. 5 quick questions, 5 quick thoughts to get to know you just a little bit better as a person. What's the best thing you've read recently?
Oh boy, I read a lot, and I could talk about sales, but sometimes I really delve into the source of human nature, and a great book that I feel provides a foundation for everything that we talk about was Humankind: A Hopeful History by Rutger Bregman. And just very briefly, the reason I enjoy it so much, it's kind of the antithesis of Lord of the Flies, which would suggest that in our purest form we are competitive and aggressive. Um, Rutger Bregman really uses a lot of historical facts to almost show that we're peaceful and cooperative in our purest form. And he goes from examples of the Second World War, where they look at the number of rifles actually fired was less than 20%, because most people don't want to kill people, a lot of the soldiers on the front lines. And there's just a litany of evidence that is extremely persuasive. And I guess in many ways that does shape how we negotiate, how we do business with people, and what we can expect reciprocally with the right attitude. So I would definitely recommend that book.
How about your favorite vacation spot?
I used to take 100 flights a year, and I build in a lot of vacations with a lot of my business travel. But the last 2 summers, I've done two classics. 2 years ago, I did Amalfi Coast in Italy, which was just phenomenal. And Mediterranean lifestyle, and then last year I did Santorini in Greece, and both were special in different ways. But it's just a great, for for someone in Canada with the winter, an August vacation to Santorini or Amalfi Coast is a great thing to do before the winter sets in.
Fantastic. How about your favorite food?
Oh boy, I've traveled a lot and eaten at a lot of restaurants. I would say it's evolved over time, where, I would say, you know, when I was younger, give me a steakhouse or Italian, and I would just crush it. And I still enjoy that type of food. But nowadays I've taken on other tastes. Maybe it's the Mediterranean thing. So the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle. If the 12-year-old me knew that I would like uh, sea bass, as a meal, he would be shocked. So I would say this is something that's evolved over time.
How about the most interesting job you've ever had?
Loved a lot of my jobs, and it's turned me into the person I am today through growth. But I still lament when I was 17 and I picked up a job as a windsurfing teacher, and used to spend my summers on the beach teaching people how to windsurf and do something that I learned to do when I was a boy at my cottage. When I think back on that and how fulfilling that was at that particular time compared to other things that I've done, it definitely is on parallel.
And finally, what kind of music do you listen to when you want to be inspired?
I love all types of music. However, for 20 years, there is a particular piece, a classical piece that I do listen to when I'm creating or inspiring, and that's different forms of classical, but in particular, Adagio in G minor would be my favorite piece, which has many variations, including Jim Morrison reciting poetry to it in an American prayer. So it really does cover all music genres in a beautiful way.
Well, fantastic. Jeffrey, this has been great. How can people get in touch if they want to learn more about you and what you do in the book and the whole bit?
But the easiest way to get in touch with me is my website, which is geoffreymreid.com with a G, Geoffrey Reid, Reid.com. My book is all over the place. It hit bestseller status not that long ago, and it's available on Amazon. I've kind of set my website up so that anyone in any country, I have a lot of colleagues in different places and who can just go to the country store of the Amazon, which can sometimes get complicated if they're not in the United States or Canada. But otherwise, the local Amazon store will pick it up, Barnes and Noble, as well as Kobo and all the other mediums. It can be found as well.
Fantastic. And folks, we will put all of that information down in the show notes. You're going to be down there leaving 5 stars anyway, so you can click on those links and head on over and check out the book and Jeffrey's website as well. So, Jeffrey, again, thank you so much for being on the show. Such great value, such great sales insights. Thank you for being here and sharing with our audience.
Thank you, Tony. It was a real pleasure.
So, folks, that is our show. Remember, we are still in the middle of the Great Service Comeback. Remember, you do not want to compete on price. As Jeffrey talked about today, you want to get your sales process dialed in, you want to get your value proposition dialed in, and make sure that you are competing on experience, not price. It is the best way to go. And while you're over there buying his book, check out mine on Amazon.com. Together We Serve by Tony Johnson. You can get it on paperback, digital, or audiobook. Until next time, I've been Tony Johnson, your customer experience strategist and trainer, reminding you to keep your customers at the center of everything you do, because that's where the most amazing things are possible. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will talk to you next week.
This has been Customer Service Academy Radio with Tony Johnson. Tony is available to speak at your event, meeting, or workshop. Have a powerful customer-focused day.